So everybody, including neurodivergents, seem to be aware of the fact that very often, particularly autists, are famously treating things like they are sacred. Oh, you touch my thing and I don't want my thing anymore. I actually was looking at a short the other day where somebody had a STEM toy and they did a little scene. They had a STEM toy. Somebody else wanted to touch it. They're like, sure, you can hold it. And then you don't want it anymore. The person tries to give it back and it's like, no, it's fine. You can keep it. Yeah, you just keep it. I've actually done this in life. I'm thinking about this concept because from a, I was about to say from a holiness standpoint, I was raised with that like Bible Belt mentality. I call it the Bible Belt drop waist because it's not where they say the Bible Belt is, but I knew some people who kind of migrated south and you have that same kind of, I don't know, I swear you have the same kind of thing in that area, and that was what kind of is in my background. So sometimes the terms other people use with me pop into my head, and that one just popped into my head, and that's not a term I use with myself. But anyway, from like a spiritual standpoint, okay, there is this awareness of self, and there is, anywhere you go, you're probably going to be able to find someone who has a history of awareness of spirituality involving the concept of God within self, of us all being connected. That's what connects us. That's what gives us life. And that's what, if it leaves, takes it away. So there is an inherent, I swear it's connected. There is an inherent concept. I don't know how I'm going to connect it though. If you are autistic, you have a different set of reasons why you're here and spiritual gifts on this planet. And there is something about the concept of self as God. I'm going to try to sit back and get my thoughts together. Something about the concept of self as God, wherein there is recognition that what is inside of us all is God. We are the temple for God. In that respect, if you think about it, it would make perfect sense. It would make perfect sense for a group of people who see, approach, and experience everything completely differently in our own way to be very aware of that sense of self, of God within us, of us being a temple. If we're aware and we treat things differently, a lot of our self-care, I've talked about the concept of romanticizing life for autists. It's what a lot of us need for mental health, for our sanity when we are by ourselves or in a safe place. The recognition of ourselves as being the most important in that moment, self-care. You stem, you do whatever is your interest, you do whatever brings you comfort, what makes you cozy, right? And I mention this specifically because I have particularly had the experience of having to drop everything for everyone else. And the masking thing where it's less, oh, I speak differently, and I change my expression, and more like I violate every aspect of my entire soul and everything that God made me to be, because it seems to make everyone uncomfortable when I'm being myself. We need to have time in our lives, all of us, where we drop that, and all of a sudden we are what God made us to be. And we are the temple for God, and we respect that, and we become sacrosanct. And this is part of what we do as autists. We have a different spiritual bent and a different spiritual connection without being taught and without having to believe in a concept of a God. There's something inside of us that knows, and it's that part of us that is God. So whether or not our brains go there or our minds want to accept it, a lot of us are just going to react strongly to things. Some people won't be that way because they're just going to have a different personality or a different approach. But I have personal experience with this, where things feel sacred and places feel sacred and you want to keep them so. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, because that's what I've been thinking about. And I know some people who are kind of like, well, I can open up and share it with everyone. I have aspects of me that are like that, but I also have aspects of me that need something to remain sacred at the end of the day. So I was looking up these words, and I'm not going to read all of it off, but I was looking it up to make sure. I was raised in a religious setting, so to me words like sacred do have a religious context, but when you look them up, there are very non-religious contexts, like Like the Cambridge Dictionary is saying one of these means considered too important to be changed. So if sacred can simply mean something that, I like this wording because it doesn't imply one thing or the other, so it seems like it should reach more people. Considered too important to be changed sits directly in line with the entire autistic mentality about life and everything when it is something that is sacred to us. It is not a joke. But it sounds like it's a joke. Oh, that's sacred. You can't touch that. You can't move that. You can't go in that place. It'll upset them. But it actually is the meaning of the word. And there's this connection in my mind between what is sacred and even the term autism, because it comes from, what is it? The term autistic and autism are based off of the Greek word autos, meaning self. And when I delved into the etymology of that term, it basically meant no matter how you take it, they're kind of saying this, what you do, what you're experiencing, how you're acting and how you're processing things is about self. Now, if you take a moment to look at that in a non-pathological way, that you are concerned with self or paying attention to that, some of the things that we do that are sacred that we don't want changed, we don't want our stuff touched, we don't want certain stuff touched, we set something up in a certain way, we don't want it moved, we live in a particular place. Maybe you've got one of those lives where everyone and everything is everywhere, and maybe you have the dream life where when you go to your place of residence, that is your home. And you don't want everyone or anyone and everything coming in because it violates it. It violates its sanctity. You know, it is something too important to be changed. It's set up in a particular way. You can have lights that are cozy and comfortable for you. You can eliminate sensory overstimulation that makes the brain process things in a way that is not healthy. And you can just have this place where you've got your safe foods and your safe drinks and your cozy things and the stuff that you put on, and a space where you can think your thoughts and you can have your true and natural expressions, and it doesn't matter how much they seem weird or inappropriate because someone's judging them by their culture and they refuse to recognize yours, so your culture is inherently and automatically inappropriate. And we are still in that place as autists. I always talk about our neuro-linguistic and neuro-cultural differences because that is what it is, but it's so far ahead of its time, so to speak. I have thoughts on that as a theory, the concept that you have to get to a place where people can understand someone else having a different culture or language. Because honestly, in my mind, at the beginning of time, before people could link up their ideas and pass the concept, like we didn't have Wi-Fi the instant the earth was invented. How was one person with one kind of sickness, mental sickness in one place, going to convince somebody else all the way across the world to have the exact same one? You know, you could be a certain color or have a certain brain type or a certain culture and come from one place to the next. And I don't see, without something like a World Wide Web ensnaring everybody and sharing ideas so people can pick up on it and take it like a contagion and act like it's just somehow natural without multiple generations of people who've been programmed to think that they're less than or they're better than, or that that's even a thought that they should be having at all, that it's natural to have these thoughts. Without that programming, at the beginning of time, people were just going to be people in different places doing different things that made sense. To this day, people understand the concept of a different culture when it comes down to something like food. You go to a place where a lot of people live right by the water, it's considered to be natural and normal that they might consume a lot of seafood and a lot of things that are from that area versus people who are nowhere near the water generally not consuming it. So if you get somebody who's from that area and they're like, oh, I'm accustomed to having a lot of fresh fish or octopus, whatever it is, then, you know, they go someplace that's wooded and far away from that and they're talking about how they usually eat all the seafood. No one's going to be like, that's weird, that's bizarre, that's strange, that's different. I don't understand why you're doing it that way. That doesn't make any sense. They're going to be like, oh, well, that's just because you live there and so you do things differently. Well, we as autists live inside of here. These are our brains. They're programmed to function differently. That's why we do things in a different way. We might be consuming more mental seafood because we're closer to the mental sea, whereas other people are living in a world that's closer to oh, I don't know, fields of things where you don't have as many fish, but you have a great abundance of grains and vegetables. So they have a greatly grain and veggie based, mental diet. It's just a different thing. I do think you have to connect ideas in order to convince people at this point in time. We're in the perfect place for that, but in order to convince other people to have an issue with somebody else's culture or something. But we do have a neuro culture and a neuro language, and it's natural to us because we have a different sort of way of we're in a different place mentally or cerebrally, and so we're processing things or consuming them differently. So we're on a natural fish diet because our minds are closer to the mental sea, But long story short, I was trying really hard not to go into that, but I'm just going with the flow today. So we're going to have that the subject jumping and things like that. I've got a lot of weird energy going on, and I'm about to take it and turn it into a video. So I'm thinking about this concept, the etymology of the word autism and self-awareness of self. When I came across that, I specifically thought, interesting how a person says, oh, well, everything you're doing is about the self and specifically self-oriented, and it was originally meant to refer to infants, but very young children. But now we're still using that same terminology for anyone who, at whatever given point of history we're at, is now recognized to be clearly autistic and have all these traits. And that's what it's based on. And when I looked at it, I thought, very much not surprising that they would say, okay, well, you're not doing it in the way that we expect or we have programmed or the way that you have been taught or told. You still, for whatever reason, are doing whatever makes sense to you, what comes from your own self. I looked at the name and I thought, not surprising that they kind of cordon you off as if it's some kind of unhealthy trait or it's almost narcissistic in some way. I think is where a lot of people somehow think there's a similarity, because they just notice that we, for some reason, are still doing stuff that's about us and our self-care and our logic. We just think differently, so there are a lot of reasons for that, and I'm not going to get into that. But I didn't see it as a complimentary thing. I was talking with someone who expressed that when they found the meaning of the word, they actually were like, oh, well, that's not bad. That's me thinking about myself. And I'm like, this is a really completely different viewpoint. When I came across the word, I was already full up on, the negativistic meanings. And this person is just kind of like, well, that's not inherently painted one way or the other. And I thought about it and I thought, okay, that's a better way of looking at it. Because it's not just about what the intent might have been in diagnosing somebody and saying this is what's wrong with you. It's also about what the word actually means, and also what it means, like what the definition of it is and where it came from. And it also includes the meaning of what it means specifically to you. And this is where words both gain and lose their meaning, because once you factor in the origin of where it came from, plus what it actually means right now in current culture, plus what its personal meaning is to you, the meaning of that word can change to the point where the word basically doesn't mean anything anymore. Or the word could now mean absolutely everything. It's like, I want to call it a probability storm of just abstract concepts, which is why I'm not wildly impressed by words as a concept for division, but I am very interested in them for their power to get a point across or to express an idea, right? So I'm thinking about this self, and I've already said there's something about the concept of what is sacred to an autist, and it can be as holy as you want it to be, or it can be as, it could be as esoteric or as mundane. It could just mean too important to be changed. But the concept of self is fascinating to me, because each human being who is created around the breath of life that is the essence of God holds within themselves God. And there are many different beliefs where you can find this mentioned, including in Christianity, where I was raised. Self as God. We are gods. We are gods individually. Not the Most High God, but we are gods that are offshoots of that God, which gave that life to us. And so, as someone who is named to be something that pays attention to the self and knows that when it comes down to it, in order to have sanity and physical health, just holistic well-being, I do have to pay attention to myself, and I have to honor what is sacred within myself. And some things will be, I also looked up this word, sacrosanct, because that is a concept that we kind of naturally hold, a lot of us as autists, as neurodivergents, that something is sacrosanct. And I magically clicked on Cambridge again. So it just comes, it's interesting. I didn't notice it has basically the same words. They're saying that sacred is considered too important to be changed. And sacrosanct, they give a really basic definition though, but sacrosanct says thought to be too important or too special to be changed on their website. And I think of that as being a really good way of talking about how you might see your place, your home, or maybe you have a place that you go that is outside in the world. Maybe there is a tree you like to sit under and just sit some part of your body against and absorb all of that natural energy and the earth that we are a party to. I don't know why earthlings often seem to think we're somehow not a party to the earth like all the other plants and animals, but we are the human animal and we are on earth, so it seems like it'd be a pretty obvious connection. We need to connect with it. Sometimes people have their sacred place, some place where you are out. I thought my camera just went out. That just freaked me out. My eye just caught the lens instead of the screen, and the lens is obviously not lit up, so I freaked out. I was like, why did it go black? Let's just go. What I'm trying to say, that scared me so much I forgot everything. What I'm trying to say is your sacred place might be lying on the ground, absorbing the aspect of God that keeps us alive on this planet, and just recharging yourself so that you can stay alive. That does a lot for mental health. It does a lot for physical health. This is a pretty good sacred place to have, but whatever you consider to be sacrosanct, right? So Auties might have a million things like this. It's something where it's supposed to be, somewhere I was reading and it said something that is meant to be inviolable. Something you are not supposed to violate, something that you are not supposed to ruin. Everywhere you go across the world, there is the concept of something or some place that is sacred, sacrosanct. You are not supposed to violate it, whether that means that you don't bring food in, or you don't wear certain things, or there's something you have to wear, whether it means that when you're there you speak in a certain way or you don't speak at all, or whether it just means we are recognizing what God has made as being something bigger than what we can recreate, what we can improve upon, the natural ecosystem of things as being so intensely specific and impressive that animals interact the way they do and bugs interact the way they do. And for instance, somebody might come in and decide, oh, I can grow this better if I implement pest control. But what they don't know is that there are a series of plants naturally growing in a place, and what you're calling pests that are seemingly doing harm are actually doing a bunch of very specific things that only they can do in the way that they do them, that are helping all of these plants to live together as one in their ecosystem. And the bugs and the plants and the sun, the ground, everything is keeping them so that they can self-proliferate and keep an entire people alive and provide them nourishment that goes back to the dawn of time. That unto itself is sacrosanct. And when you notice, without getting into it, sometimes people come in and they change this stuff. They're like, we can take what you have and we can put it in a field over there. We can, what do they call it? I can't think of the word, but we can tweak something and we can patent it and we can call it proprietary, so that now instead of being the food God put out there in the world, we've patented it so that the people who grow it have to purchase it can't regrow it because that's not part of, their legal capacity. Like, you get them kind of hooked into a system that takes everything natural out of it, and now instead of keeping the world alive, it's just kind of keeping somebody in infinite debt, and they're harangued because they can't really get out, because your system means that they can't get out of it. I'm talking about real things. Some of us will already know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to get into that right now. When you alter something, my point being, when you alter something that is supposed to be sacrosanct, it's not meant to be violated. The way it is in nature, the bugs, the air, everything, it's perfect. The alkalinity in the soil where it naturally grows, it's keeping everyone and everything alive. And us as human beings, eating the foods that we eat and are good for us, it's keeping us alive and nourishing us too. And quite frankly, it can nourish your soul. If you're able to look at it and see the beauty in how something like that is even possible, if you're able to do what you can to help it do what it does, to protect it so that it can do what it does, which then protects you by feeding you and nourishing you and teaching you so that you can do what you do, and the circle is complete. Some things are sacrosanct the way they are. And when someone comes in and decides they're going to industrialize it, change it, mark it up, make it better, it turns it into that thing where you end up harangued in certain ways. So when it comes down to it, I think this is a much grander concept than just talking about somebody's particular fidget toy, as if that particular fidget toy is just a thing and you are so sensitive about it. And why are you so sensitive about it? Because there's all of this stuff working together and all of these points that I could be making, but I'm trying to keep it together without going off the rails too many times, because all of the thoughts are connected for me. I see the connection in everything. It's not just about the toy. It's about the fact that there was an ecosystem going on. There was something where this needed that in order to perform that function. And this was helping this heal, right? The human being needs the toy or the place, whatever the location is, your home, or the volume of your music set to a place where it's good and peaceful for you and you can deal. And someone comes in and changes it so that it's so low that it's no longer relaxing. The sounds are muddled, it doesn't heal you the same way, or they turn it up to the point where it's no longer crisp and beautiful, it's now loud to the point where your ears are ringing and you can feel the vibrations inside of your head and it hurts. You know, that place where it gets ting, 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 ting loud and it just hurts because it's too much. And maybe you can't turn it back down because of the situation you're in. You know, sometimes it's as simple as put that back where I had it. Adjust that volume where it was. I had it there for a reason. And sometimes it is as complex as knowing that if you say anything about it, the person who walked in and just changed it, bad things are going to happen. It could just be a lot of discomfort that unsettles your spirit and now you can't heal and be okay. Or you could just be dealing with someone dangerous who does things. I've had this experience who does things like that, because there's a long-standing tradition of people who follow hatred instead of love. Starting something, saying something, doing anything in order to try to get a remark or a reaction. And they're egging you into it, because anything you do to react, they are now going to act like you have done them wrong and they're going to go overboard. And like I said, it could just be making you uncomfortable in the moment. For some of us, we've had all of the experiences where it's being uncomfortable, or it could be something bad happening that you could potentially heal from, or you might be afraid for your life or the lives of your loved ones. It's not always as simple as just saying put the music back or put the volume back, right? But when it comes down to it, there was something about the music when it was in the right place, that it was feeding you and it was doing something healing. There's something about the toy when it was yours and you were touching it and it had your energy, and I won't get into that, but there are different energies. People have different energies, personalities, different bents in life, different intentions. There are a lot of people where if you ask them about something like your intention in any given moment, or the energy that you embody in any given moment, they will tell you that because they understand that, they don't want people touching certain things or going certain places, because that person doesn't even have to be aware that it's happening. Once they're there, that energy, the spirit of them being there, shifts things, and what was meant to be inviolable is now violated. It changes it. It's no longer sacred and clean. Something else has been introduced to it. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad thing. You know, it could be like when you're cooking. Maybe your chicken noodle soup is sacred and it's chicken noodle soup. But somebody else comes in and they're not trying to do anything harmful, but maybe they're pouring some juice. And the next thing you know, you end up with this streak of grape juice inside of your noodle soup. Now, some people might like that. Personally, I think that would mess up the soup. And they don't have to be trying to mess it up. Or you could even have something like a child who's just playing. They want to add fun stuff from the fridge and they want to add some grape juice, or they want to throw in some Skittles or something like that. You know, that's in your mind. If that's your taste and you don't want grape juice and candy inside of your noodle soup, that's going to ruin your soup. They don't have to be going for harm. They could be going for good. They could be totally unaware of any of this. They could be 100% set in the mindset that none of this stuff exists and nothing that they do has any effect on anyone. They could believe that if you dislike grape juice and candy in your soup, it's your problem, because whatever they do has no effect on anyone unless that person chooses to be affected. But nonetheless, if you're a person who processes that soup as being ruined once there's juice and candy in it, it's no longer sacred. Maybe you no longer want to consume it. Maybe the thought of consuming it is actually making you a little sick right now while you're talking about it. But what ends up happening is that areas, peaceful places, your favorite tree, if somebody comes along and they bring their juice and their candy and they accidentally get it into your soup, or let's say it is somebody who's trying to mess up your sacred place and your sacred thing, and they intentionally are like, here, have some, and they just dump it in there and they look at you like, ooh, what you gonna do? You upset? Ooh, did you dislike that I just ruined something? What you gonna do? There are people like that too. They do this stuff on purpose. But it doesn't matter if they're doing it on purpose, not doing it on purpose, aware, unaware, if they're trying to do good, if they're trying to do harm. None of that matters. The fact is it took place. And it's still going to be about your reaction to it. The music is too loud, whatever. The soup is ruined, whatever. This is kind of how we often experience our lives. We're just inherently aware of what is and is not sacred to us. And we come across something. We might come across a new food. And the moment we realize, this tastes good, this smells good, this is easy to eat. Oh, an hour later I'm digesting it and I realize I don't feel sick, I don't feel heavy, I feel really nice. Now all of a sudden that's a safe food, right? Now all of a sudden it's become sacred. It's a place where we can go to have an experience. It becomes sort of a spiritual place or location, right? The consuming of this food is now a thing that can be safe, that can be good, that can feed the God within and the body without and everything else. It works, and we're working in conjunction with each other. We might learn to cook it. And then it's kind of like the relationship with the plants out there, where you want to do what you can to keep them safe, but not destroy their natural ecosystem. You might be in a place where you can throw a few things together and try to create this meal. And you want to do what you can to help the meal happen, but not, mess it up and change it and turn it into something completely different. These things become sacred to us. And they're doing an amazing job for us, for our well-being, for our health. They can make us feel better when we feel sad or when we feel stressed out, or sometimes there are things that we have like, you might have, I've had this experience in life, trying to find a good moisturizer because my skin has specific needs. So when I have found a really good moisturizer, it has become sacred. That's the only thing I want now, because the other ones leave my skin too dry, or they leave it greasy, or they leave it feeling like I put a plastic bag on and can't take it off, or something crazy. So for me, that particular moisturizer will now become that sacred thing. I don't want it messed up. I don't want it taken away. I don't want somebody else to do something that contaminates it and makes it gross and filthy so I can't use it that day, right? And I don't have any more. There are a lot of things that can mess that up, and I don't want it messed with. And if we're going to be perfectly honest, just about anyone can relate to this in some way. If you are self-aware enough to be truly, and I get that that's a rarity, if you're self-aware enough to be truly aware of the importance of things to your health, Very often you'll have a level of respect for keeping it sacred because you have a level of respect for your own health and you get your purpose. You know that you have a reason to be here. You might love yourself enough to know that wherever you are here, it is for a reason. And as long as you are at your peak and at your best, you are as close as you can be to fulfilling that reason. Whereas if you are not well anymore, maybe you feel like you can't fulfill it as well. And if you are just flat out unable to function that day, you might feel like, okay, this is not the moment when I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose in this life on this planet. Who's to say? You know, God can use anything in any situation. So you might be fulfilling something by being ill in the right place at the right time, or maybe you're being protected by being plastered in bed that day so you can't move. Because maybe the place where you were going to go or the thing you were planning on doing was going to go terribly wrong in some way that now you'll never know because it won't happen. Who knows? But I'm saying just in general, as a basic metaphor, not to pull apart too far, when you're at your best, there's something more fulfilled, you know? The body as a temple and the individual person as the temple of God. There's something about that concept of that autos, self, autism concept, that mentality where you are aware of the self and you're caring for the self, being inherently a temple for God, where God has already programmed you with what you need. There's a reason why you love bananas or why you hate them. There is a reason why you love this particular kind of music but can't stand the other. And so when you indulge in the thing that keeps you and keeps you healthier, you're ultimately going down that track. Being able to be aware of what's best for you and go for it, and be aware of what's worst for you and avoid it, is you staying on the track of how God built you, how God built your mind, the person you are, and taking care of the specific kind of temple that the Most High God created you as individual God to be. There's a reason why you need to have some things work properly and some things be okay, because ultimately at the end of the day, if that's a concept you can grasp, that you can grab, that you're okay with, that you like, no matter what, when you are taking care of yourself, you are taking care of God. And when you're showing respect for yourself, you are showing respect to God and whatever it is that is going on inside of you as the individual God. It is ultimately feeding into the purposes of the ultimate and most high creator God. Your very life's essence is inextricably connected because it's not your life essence. It's God's life essence that lets you be. So it is God within. And when you take care of yourself, whether it be because you want somebody to leave your stuff alone, or because you want to consume the foods that don't make you feel sick for a day, or if we're being realistic, some of us know you're off for like 3 days or a week trying to get back to self, right? When you are choosing to consume whatever it is that brings you pleasure and brings you comfort and what is healthy, because we're not making any excuses. I'm not getting into a conversation where somebody is like, I need this, fill in here with something that you know is poisonous, harmful, is personally destructively addictive, whatever. I'm not ever going to allow any of my points to sound like that. So if I have it pop into my head, I'm going to fix it. So if you're like, oh, well, I need to do whatever feels good because I just listened to this random video someday and this random person I don't know just said I need to do what I like and what feels good, you have a tendency to know somewhere inside of your body or your mind when the thing that you like, so to speak, is actually just killing you or harming you or ruining something or ruining somebody, when it's just pure hatred in the guise, in the thinly veiled guise of love. I'm talking about the things that are actually good, things you can actually holistically metabolize into your life that will add to something beautiful. And when you do that, and that is being processed by the God of individual self, it's going to be processed by the Almighty God,